welcome. I hope you are having a great and wonderful day. Great and wonderful day. Great and wonderful day. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is During Dialogues, and I'm your host tonight, Shantae Charles. We have made it. We have made it. We have made it to halftime of season 10. This is episode 50, and I am excited because we've made it. And we are going to be taking a break after tonight. We will be back on at the toward the end of this month. December 20th, we'll be back somewhere around there through the rest of the end of the year. But we will be taking about a 2 week break just so I can catch my breath, do what I teach all the time, which is practice some self care, practice some self reflection moments, all of that good stuff. I'm looking forward to taking the time out to do it. And then we will be back, like I said, around December 20th through the end of the year. So tonight is Thinking Thursday, Theology Thursday, and we are back reading two books that just keep on coinciding with one another. And one of them is Black Theology and Black Power by James H. Cone, awesome theologian. And then Robert P. Jones, White Too Long. So we will be reading from both of these tonight. And I'm going to jump right into the reading just to make sure we have enough time for a conversation. So if you would like to converse tonight and you want to make sure you're able to do that, you can check us out on Daring Dialogues IG. We are broadcasting there as well. So if we get to that point and you want to say, hey, I have something to say, you can jump on over to IG and click on the camera and we will bring you on for some response. So let's hop right in. In James Cone's book, we're looking at the chapter on Toward a Constructive Definition of Black Power. And there's a question he asks: is there an appropriate response to white racism? Is there an appropriate response to white racism? Let's hear what James Cone has to say. And then in Robert P. Jones's book, we're going to jump into the topic of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America and Dylan Roof. And unfortunately, we've had some news of yet another shooting on this time on a school campus. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. James Cone says, the asking of this question is inevitable. Whites want to know whether Black power is an appropriate response to their bigotry. It is indeed interesting that they, the oppressors, should ask this question, since whatever response Blacks make is nothing but a survival reaction to white oppression. It is time for whites to realize that the oppressor is in no position whatever to define the proper response to any enslavement. He is not the slave, but the enslaver. And if the slave should choose to risk death rather than submit to the humiliating orders of the master, then that is his right. Bigger Thomas in Richard Wright's Native Son demonstrates this choice when interrogated by white policemen who wanted him to confess to intimately assaulting a white girl. Come on now, boy. We've treated you pretty nice, but we can get tough if we have to, see? It's up to you. Get over there by that bed and show us how you assaulted and murdered her. I didn't, Bigger said through stiff lips. Aw, come on. What you got to lose now? Show us what you did. I don't want to. You have to. I don't have to. Well, we'll make you. You can't make me do nothing but die. That is the key to an understanding of Black power. Any advice from whites to blacks on how to deal with white oppression is automatically under suspicion as a clever device to further enslavement. Furthermore, it is white intellectual arrogance which assumes that it has a monopoly on intelligence and moral judgment. How else can one explain the shocked indignation when the Kerner report declared that race prejudice has shaped our history decisively? This is something that has been declared. It didn't just happen with the CRT movement. After all, Baldwin, Wright, Du Bois, and a host of other black writers have been saying for decades that racism is woven into the whole pattern of American society. Evidently, the judgments of black people are not to be taken seriously if indeed whites read them at all. The real menace in white intellectual arrogance is the dangerous assumption that the structure that enslaves is the structure that will also decide when and how this slavery is to be abolished. The sociological and psychological reports made by most white scholars assume that they know more about my frustration or my despair or my hatred than I do. They want to supply the prescriptions to my problems while refusing to recognize that for over 300 years, blacks have listened to them and their reports, and we are still degraded. The time has come for white Americans to be silent and listen to black people. Now, he wrote this again in, let's see, 1969, and they're still not listening. Just think about that. Why must the white man assume that he has the intellectual ability or the moral sensitivity to know what blacks feel, or to ease the pain, to smooth the hurt, to eradicate the resentment? Since he knows that he intimately assaulted our women, dehumanized our men, and made it inevitable that black children should hate their blackness, he ought to understand why blacks must cease listening to him in order to be free. Since whites do not know the extent of black suffering, they can only speak from their own perspective, which they call reason. This probably accounts for white appeals to nonviolence and Christian love all the time. The Christian understanding of love we'll discuss a little bit later. White people should not even expect blacks to love them, and to ask for it merely adds insult to injury. For the white man, writes Malcolm X, to ask the black man if he hates him is just like the intimate assaulter asking the intimately assaulted, "Do you hate me?" The white man is in no moral position to accuse anyone else of hate. Whatever blacks feel toward whites or whatever their response to white racism, it cannot be submitted to the judgments of white society. When a white man asks, "Is black power the answer?" or says, "It takes time," or "Wait, let's talk it over and solve this problem together," I feel the same way you do, but I must conclude that he is talking from a different perspective. There is no way in the world I can get him to see that he is the problem, not me. He has shaped my response. Bennett, then, is right when he states, "We do not come up with the right answers to our problems because we seldom ask ourselves the right question." There is no Negro problem in America. There has never been a Negro problem in America. The problem of race in America is a white problem. To understand that problem and to control it, we must address ourselves to the fears and frailties of white people. We learn nothing from a study of Harlem. To understand Harlem, we must go not to Harlem, but to the conscience of, quote, good white people. We must ask not what is Harlem, but what have you made of Harlem? Why did you create it, and why do you need it? Therefore, when blacks are confronted by whites who want to help with that, quote unquote, black problem by giving advice on the appropriate response, whites should not be surprised if black people respond, "We wish to plead our own case. Too long have others spoken for us." I am not prepared to talk seriously with a man who essentially says, quote, "I sit on a man's back, choking him and making him carry me, and yet assure myself and others that I am very sorry for him and wish to lighten his load by all possible means, except by getting off his back." Blacks must demand that whites get off their backs. If they do not get off the backs of blacks, they must expect that they will literally throw them off by whatever means are at their disposal. This is the meaning of Black power. Depending on the response of whites, it means that emancipation may even have to take the form of outright rebellion. No one can really say what form the oppressed must take in relieving their oppression. But if blacks are pushed to the point of unendurable pain with no option but a violent affirmation of their own being, then violence is to be expected. Violence is a personal necessity for the oppressed, writes John Riley in his analysis of Richard Wright's Native Son. When life in a society consists of humiliation, one's only rescue is through rebellion. It is not a strategy consciously devised, it is the deep, instinctive expression of a human being denied their individuality. Yet, expression of the rebellion can be liberating, or as again Bennett says, the boundary of freedom is man's power to say no. And whoever refuses to say no involves himself tragically in his own degradation. Black power says no. Moving into Robert P. Jones' reading, The Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Although it received little press and was rarely incorporated into explanations of his motivations, Dylann Roof's identity as a white Christian was central to his worldview. As he became more radicalized by contact with white supremacist websites, reading materials, and organizations, the evidence suggests that his Christian identity easily accommodated this shift. At the time he committed the murders, Roof was a baptized member in good standing at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Columbia, a church associated with the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, ELCA, a white mainline Protestant denomination. According to his stepmother, Roof regularly went to church growing up, including catechism classes. After his arrest, Roof articulated his motivations in a journal that was found in his jail cell, which ultimately became Government Exhibit 500 in his trial. 6 of the first 7 pages contain prominent Christian imagery. In the 42 pages of the journal, Roof includes no less than 18 sketches of different types of crosses. The most prominent depiction of the cross takes up an entire page. It has the word Jesus over the top of a large 3-dimensional cross with the words "In God We Trust" above the horizontal bar. The background contains clouds and what seems to be large raindrops falling behind the cross. But the most arresting image of Roof's journal is on page 5, a full detailed pencil drawing of a bearded white Jesus emerging from the tomb after his resurrection. What I call, in one of my YouTube videos here, Kenny Loggins Christ. You can go look up that video and learn all about the wonderful history of the colonized Christ. Roof's drawing is not the work of a neophyte. It reflects a detailed knowledge of traditional Christian iconography, and this really needs to say traditional Byzantine iconography. Jesus is depicted with a halo around his head, indicating his divine nature. At the top of the halo, Roof put the word Jesus. To the left and right of the head within the halo are the abbreviations IC and XC, a traditional abbreviation of the Greek words for Jesus Christ that is a popular depiction in Eastern Orthodox Christianity. Jesus is depicted as stepping forward, the viewer through the open tomb door, with a white foot extending forward under his long robes. Roof also seemingly spent hours designing his own personal logo, which appears multiple times throughout his journal. The most notable feature of his design is that the anchoring image in the center of the logo is a cross. Specifically, it is a variant of the cross developed and used most by the Russian Orthodox Church, which contains 2 additional small horizontal bars representing the inscription above the head of Jesus and the footrest to which his feet were nailed at his crucifixion. In the four quadrants created by the main bars of the cross, Ruth placed four white supremacist symbols from top going to clockwise. So he is trying to incorporate white supremacy into his Christian iconography. In one corner is 14. If you ever see someone tattooed with that number, they're more than likely probably connected to white supremacy. The 14 number usually represents the 14 words, which is a popular white supremacist slogan, quote, "We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children." Number two, the number 88, which is a coded reference to Hail Hitler. Ruth predicts in the journal that Hitler will one day be declared a Christian saint. Number three, a swastika. And number four, a life rune image, an icon appropriated by the Nazis to refer to an ideal Aryan or Norse heritage. Below all this are his initials in bold block letters, DSR. Finally, there's this, Ruth's take on his own Christianity. This is what he wrote. I see some people who seem to use Christianity as an excuse for not doing anything. They tell themselves they are being pious, but they are really being cowardly. Their piety is their excuse. But Christianity doesn't have to be this weak, cowardly religion. There's plenty of evidence to indicate that Christianity can be a warrior's religion. Clearly, Ruth's worldview was anchored in his self-understanding as a white Christian in relationship to a white Jesus. And although neither the press nor law enforcement described him this way, the most accurate term for him is a white Christian terrorist. Certainly, law enforcement officials, politicians, and the public would have easily labeled him a radical Islamic terrorist if the notebook had been filled with crescent images, a portrait of Muhammad, and reflections on Islam as a warrior's religion. It's vital, if we are to properly understand the problem, that we not flinch from the clear evidence that Ruth's Christianity wasn't incidental to his motivations and his racist views. It was integral to his identity and helped to fuel this horrific violence. He understood himself as a white Christian warrior who consciously launched this attack on sacred ground, targeting a historic Black church in the hopes of encouraging his fellow white Christians to rise up and become completely ruthless to the Blacks. And as I've warned and said before, to Black Christians who keep hanging around these white supremacist Christians, don't find yourself in the presence of another one of these white Christian terrorists. Ruth summarized his actions in the journal as follows: I did what I thought would make the biggest wave, and now the fate of our race sits with my white brothers who continue to live freely. So when people say, I don't understand why you keep having this conversation about Jesus, it doesn't matter what color Jesus is, tell that to the white Christian terrorist who's drawing pictures of Kenny Loggins' Christ and justifying the murder of 9 Black Christians. That's why it matters. That's why we talk about it. That's why we teach the truth. That's why we tell you that a visual lie is still a lie. Because this visual lie led to the murders of 9 Black people. Let me continue. While the Christian underpinnings of Ruth's racist violence were mostly ignored by the public, it was not lost on his home denomination, the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. In addition to its connection to Ruth, the ELCA also had connections to 2 of the victims, Reverend Pinckney, the senior pastor, and Reverend Daniel Lee Simmons Sr., a retired pastor who regularly attended the Bible study at the church. Both were graduates of Lutheran Theological Seminary and ELCA Seminary. The day after the shooting, Reverend Elizabeth Eaton, the presiding bishop, issued a statement acknowledging the denomination's intimate connection to both the perpetrator and the victims. The suspected shooter is a member of an ELCA congregation. All of a sudden, and for all of us, this is an intensely personal tragedy. One of our own is alleged to have shot and killed two who adopted us as their own. While stopping short of locating racism in the church itself, Reverend Eaton's public statement did note the widespread structural racism in American culture. But we need you to locate racism in the church as well. And we need all the white Christians, not just some, but all the white Christians, to begin to locate racism in yourself and in your denomination and in your local body of believers. Because we don't move forward when you want to point outward at racism in the world, but you don't deal with racism in the churches and within yourself. We might say that this is an isolated act by a deeply disturbed man, but we know that this is not the whole truth. It is not an isolated event, and even if the shooter was unstable, the framework upon which he built his vision of race is not. Racism is a fact in American culture. The statement called for Lutherans to mourn, but it also urged them to get to work and to be honest about the reality of racism within us and around us. The significant work has commenced in the denomination. These events led to ELCA pastor Lenny Duncan to write Dear Church, a love letter from a Black preacher to the whitest denomination in the U.S., a hard-hitting book to his fellow Lutherans. Reverend Duncan pulls few punches in calling his denomination to go beyond easy condemnations of personal racism. While the churches have called racism a sin, Duncan argues that focusing on the personal misunderstands the nature and magnitude of the problem. White supremacy doesn't need active racists in order to function. Let me say that again, because there's a lot of white people that still don't get that. White supremacy doesn't need active racists to function. It is a demonic system with a life of its own. It is radical evil. And Duncan also notes that dismantling this system is going to take some very difficult introspection and uncomfortable reparative actions on the part of white Christians. As Lutherans, he says, we have been trained to search for reconciliation. Like the person clearing their throat when I pause during the confession and forgiveness portion of the liturgy, we don't like waiting in between repentance and reconciliation. That silent pause is a moment for us to see ourselves for who we really are, and it is scary as beep. Since 2015, Reverend Eaton has led the denominational leadership into this uncomfortable space. The 2019 churchwide assembly took a number of actions aimed at recognizing and dismantling the overt and covert ways that a culture of white supremacy denies full humanity to all people. In recognition of the quadricentennial remembrance of American enslavement, the denomination passed a resolution condemning white supremacy and issued a public apology to all people of African descent. That resolution committed white Lutherans to seek a deeper understanding of enslavement, its legacy, institutional and structural racism, of white privilege, and attitudes and foundations of white supremacy. Second, the Assembly voted to establish June 17th as Emmanuel 9 Day of Repentance, commemorating the martyrdom of the 9 African American members who were murdered by Ruth, whom they explicitly identify as a violent white supremacist who grew up in the ELCA. Perhaps most significantly, they have committed themselves to an ongoing relationship of fellowship and accountability with the AME Church, the home denomination of Mother Emanuel Church, to develop new models that move us from dialogue to diaxprasis, or dialogue in action, for the sake of our witness to our unity in Christ in these divisive and deadly times. Now, after they get done with all of these words for the resolution, let's talk about actual repair, like financial repair, like land repair, tangible repair. Because one thing I know about my fellow white people out here in the world, because a lot of things that is done is based on reason. You can find a whole lot of reasons for saying a whole lot of things and not moving to the place of action. I don't want to read any more resolutions. I don't want to read any more writings about what you're going to do. At this point in American history, it is 2021. What are you going to act upon? We don't need any more sayings. We don't need any more promises. We don't need any more oh so sorries. What are you willing to physically and tangibly produce and release and let go of and put into the hands of someone else? That's really where I am. And I know there are a lot more African Americans, especially descendants of the formerly enslaved, who are at that same point. Beyond all of the talk, where is the action? Beyond the marching, where is the action? Where is the demand, not only just in Christendom, but also outside of that? Where is the demand for actual policy changes? Where is the demand for repair to go directly to Black and underserved communities? It's not a whole lot of that. It's a lot of we're sorry, lots of apologies, but not a lot of actual repair. So, last section, and then I'm going to open it up for response. The South Carolina Capitol grounds. The murders at Emmanuel AME Church also led to a fairly dramatic series of events at the South Carolina Capitol. The day after the shooting, Republican Governor Nikki Haley ordered the American and South Carolina flags over the Capitol to be lowered to half-mast as a sign of mourning. But the Confederate battle flag had remained at full mast because when the flag was moved from the Capitol Dome to the Confederate monument on the Capitol grounds, the Republican-controlled legislature passed a law specifying the height at which it was required to be flown and made no provisions or exceptions in the law. Only a new act of legislature could lower the flag. Outraged activists took matters into their own hands. On June 27, 10 days after the murders, Bree Newsom, who is African American and the daughter of the dean of Howard University Divinity School, Clarence Newsom, climbed the flagpole and removed the flag with the assistance of a white male fellow activist. As she descended with the flag, she declared, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Both Newsom and her fellow activists were arrested. The flag was back at full mast within an hour. Faced with mounting pressure, Governor Haley called for the state legislature to act. A bill passed the Senate quickly on July 7th and came to the floor of the House on July 8th. After a tense and heated 13-hour debate that continued until 1 in the morning on July 10th, in which some white Republican lawmakers continued to argue that the flag merely represents Southern heritage, a bill to remove the Confederate battle flag completely from the Capitol grounds finally passed 94-20. Yes, there were still 20 people in the legislature that thought this was an appropriate flag to still be on the state grounds. Governor Haley immediately signed the bill that morning using 9 ceremonial pins, which would be sent to the families of each of the 9 victims of the Emmanuel AME Church shooting. The flag was removed later that morning. At 10 a.m. on July 10th, a 3-man state trooper honor guard in their dress uniforms and white gloves arrived to remove the flag. Standing at attention, 2 white troopers lowered the flag and folded it into a long rectangle with military precision. They then turned in unison, handing it to an African American trooper who crisply turned on his heels and walked away from the monument, ending the Confederate battle flag's 54-year presence at the state capitol. Speaking after the bill signing ceremony, Haley called for the state to look to a new future. In South Carolina, we honor tradition, history, and heritage, but there's a place for that flag, and that flag needs to be in a museum where we will continue to make sure people will honor it appropriately. How do you honor treachery appropriately? I just want to know. But the State House, that's an area that belongs to everyone, and no one should drive by the State House and feel pain. No one should drive by the State House and feel like they don't belong. Yeah. Because again, even in the removal of a flag that screams traitor, even in the removal of it, there was still a pandering happening to the spirit of white supremacy. And so again, as James Cone said, we cannot trust our destiny in the hands of people whose ancestors was the cause of the oppression, because their descendants are going to continue to gently pander and apologize for things that need to be utterly cast down, removed, destroyed. All right, I'm done talking. If you would like to respond to tonight's teaching, reading, discussion, you may go to my IG. You can pop onto my IG. I'm on here right now, and the camera is ready for anyone who wants to come on and respond to the message. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm gonna say this before I go into this. I was having a problem getting on last night.
Uh-oh.
For some reason, it wouldn't download. It opened up for me, but tonight I'm on.
Good.
I'm gonna go back to something that you and I experienced after the George Floyd thing, when we were on that Zoom meeting with those people talking about police officers, and there was the white pastors on there had all the solutions. Which their main solution was what was it? give the police your trust.
Yeah.
Okay. Now y'all want us to give murderers our trust. Muhammad Ali said it best, right? When he was told that they're good white people, he said, "Well, if a bunch of rattlesnakes are coming down the hallway, and they're saying, oh, hold the door because I'm a good snake," he said, "I'm not a fool. I'm gonna close the door and let them sort it out." Because you could be saying I'm a good one, and you come on in and see. He said it best. Okay, so no, y'all just step aside and handle y'all people, handle the oppressors. I had to set somebody straight.
And it's so interesting, because reading our ancestors, they had a very clear mind about the fact that this is a white problem. And that whatever Black people are doing is a response to, it's a reaction to a problem that was created, that was decided before we got here. 1619, 1630s. You created this division, and now any response that we have to it, it's all of a sudden they want to make that the origin point versus what they started.
Right. Now listen. I'm gonna finish what I was saying before, because I was going off there. Now, you remember my response when they let me speak, right?
You have to refresh my memory.
I told them, no, we don't need to give them our trust. They need to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
See, they need to earn it. How about them earning our trust? They're killing us.
Right.
How are we supposed to trust them when they're killing us?
Yeah.
Simply because of the color of our skin? No, they need to earn our trust.
No due process.
Right, with no due process.
Mm-hmm.
No due process. Now, I had to set some people straight that was on came on Ben Dixon's thing that he had posted something,
Mm-hmm.
and he was talking about him always talking about racism,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I set them straight on it. I said, well, you can't tell us how to respond to something that your ancestors started
Mm-hmm.
and that you're still benefiting off.
Right.
I said, if you don't want us to talk about it, racism, and we wouldn't have anything to talk about. That solution is plain and simple. I mean, it's not rocket science.
Mm-hmm.
You end racism. What can we complain about at that point? Oh, by the way, how about giving us our money? Give us end racism, give us our money, and leave us alone. We'll do just fine.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. But I just thought that because when they released his manifesto talking about Ruth, I went and read the manifesto. And when I read it and I saw those drawings, I said, this here is Kenny Loggins Christ. If you're just coming on and you did not see this, I'm going to show it to you again. I'm going to show you one of the drawings. And I think his journal is still up for people to be able to read it because it's like a evidence document now. But dude was drawing Kenny Loggins Christ. So again, when people say to me things like, it doesn't matter. I can't tell you how many white Christians done said that to me. It don't matter what color he is. Well, it clearly mattered to the person who went and murdered 9 black Christians.
Pastor Shante, I've heard that same thing from black people. It doesn't matter.
Because those black people are now parroting white supremacist Christians,
yes,
who are their friends.
Yes. You have a whole religious system, and that's what white supremacy is. It's a religious system,
Mm-hmm.
a whole religious system based on the lie that Jesus was white.
And that religious system is sitting on top of Western Christianity, and in some cases it's enmeshed with Western Christianity.
Mm-hmm. And you said something that how and I'm gonna go to Putin, because Putin said how what black people do is born out of, is a response to what's going on in the country. Mm-hmm. Putin pointed that out with Black Lives Matter.
Of course, but here's the thing: he doesn't care. He's not pointing it out because he cares about us. He's pointing it out to say, I know America's weak spot.
Mm-hmm.
I know that America does not treat its black citizens appropriately or kindly. And I am going to milk that in my warfare against your country. Because you refuse to repair these people, I can send all kind of propaganda to a group of these people in your country.
Mm-hmm.
I can make them promises about, hey, if you fight against your country with Russia,
mm-hmm.
we'll, because think about it, that's what the British did.
Yep.
When the British was fighting, they said, hey, if you defect from America as an enslaved person, if you defect and come over to our side and fight, we'll make sure that you are paid. We'll pay you a soldier's commission, and we will free you in our territory. So we apparently this country hadn't learned anything about history and warfare. We ain't learned nothing.
Well, that's because they're getting a whitewash history.
Yeah, we haven't learned much. I'm like, if he's saying those things and there is no real help for a lot of Black America right now. You're looking at least 70-80% of Black America is in at poverty levels. Why wouldn't some of them turn on their own country? Just thinking logistically. Like, yeah, we know about treason, but what investment have you made in Black America for them to not consider that treason would be better than what they have right now?
Well, actually, we can consider what America has not done for the Black people as treason.
Yeah, we could, but I'm talking about their definition of treason. And let's be clear. Here's the other piece. When you see white people committing treason on January 6th,
yes,
and absolutely the bare minimum is done for the few that they did charge, but the vast majority of them, they never brought in, they never charged them, and they committed treason.
Oh, and here's something else that was never done. Not one of them was charged with murder.
Right. Yeah.
See, and there was someone murdered there. The young lady was murdered there. A police officer was beat to death, died from the injuries.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least two, at minimum.
And there was, I think, like four subsequent suicides after that too. I think it was like at least, I think it was about 4. So my thing is, again, when you continue to let justice not be served, you are setting the precedent across the board for citizens to say, this country is really not about this life. This country is not about what they say they are about. How are you going to say that you're about protecting the government, right? Or protecting the institutions or protecting the Constitution, and you literally let people run through your main house?
Mm-hmm.
You literally let people run through your house, your sacred house, trash it, urine, feces, some of everything, all up in the Senate chambers, and your only response to that is 2 to 3 months in jail?
Mm-hmm.
Are you kidding me? Your only response to that is to still let the main propagator of all of that still be running around, still running his mouth on TV, still giving him interviews, letting him take pictures with Rittenhouse? That's your response to so-called loyalty to the country? If you think other countries are not looking at us like, are y'all really? You think they would have even made it to the gate of Kim Jong-un's governmental facility?
No.
Okay.
No.
But we have all this heat and all this fire and all this talk against other countries, but we let this happen in our own country. Make it make sense to me. That's all I'm saying. Make it make sense to me that you are letting literal domestic terrorists run around free to organize and plan and do it again, because they trying to do it again.
Oh, and listen, even to the point of where they're requesting freedom to travel. I mean, where they do that at? Seriously.
Yeah. So there's a lot that, I'm just like, where are the smart people in the government right now? I'm just looking for them. I'm wondering if the light bulb is turned on, because clearly I don't think it is. I don't think the light bulb is on.
But listen, that shows us how deeply the injustice system racism is embedded in the justice system, or even the government, the complete system of government.
I'm just like, listen, you guys spent 4 years. You spent 4 years terrorized about what you thought number 44 was going to do. You spent 4 years on television talking about how he's a radical Islamist. He's going to take down America. But when the real radicals came, when the real radical had the control buttons, the nuclear buttons, when the real radicals showed up, you guys didn't have all of that smoke for them. It wasn't really an insurrection. It was a peaceful protest. Really? That's what y'all call a peaceful protest?
Of course, but yet Black Lives Matter protests, they're looting, they're, all that type of stuff. They're rioters and they're looting. January 6th was the perfect example of terrorism.
Right.
Homegrown terrorism.
Homegrown, and again, pandered to, because there were thousands of people there, and they have maybe rounded up 20 to 25, and they have maybe sentenced about 5 to 7 of them. So how do you get thousands of people bum rushing your house, but when all is said and done, you only arrest a few, and then the charges that you bring doesn't even put most of them in jail for even a year. And then you come back and say, well, we just want to have some hearings with some questions. We just want to keep asking questions all year long. Listen. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Final thoughts, Pastor Ben?
Well, we need to wake up. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being woke, okay? That simply means that you see what's going on and you will not be fooled.
Right.
That's what that means.
Yeah.
That's what, regardless of what they say, that's what it means.
Yeah.
My intellect level is high enough that I can see what's going on, and I know what's going on, and you can't fool me with the lies or deception. That's what being woke is, plain and simple.
Yeah.
But we just need to wake up.
I'm going to warn.
Come together as a people.
I'm going to warn one more time. All of y'all Black Christians hanging around these white supremacist Christians, you better watch your back. That's all I'm going to say. You better watch your back. You better watch your back. Because there are people in these places of worship that feel just as strongly as Dylan Roof does. And they're looking for their opportunity too to honor Kenny Loggins Christ. Go ahead.
Just let me throw this in there, because when you said that, you reminded me that there was this white pastor, right? What he did, he adopted African children.
Oh, let's see. That's a whole other show, Pastor Ben.
Yeah, and majority of the congregation left. It was a white, basically what you would call a white church, and they left because of that. Okay, so yeah, racism is running rampant in white Christianity.
And white pastors who are going to come by and scroll by and look at this, I'm telling you too. Get these white supremacist Christians out of your church.
And you change too if you want them.
And don't be entertaining their white supremacy and thinking it's just a fleeting thing. Because you're going to be held responsible for knowing what spirit they are of, and you have Black believers amongst you, and they don't know the imminent danger that they are in, but you know. But because that's your white brother and your white sister, you won't say nothing. You better say something. You better say something. So this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues. And I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. We are on episode 50. I am going to be taking a break. Lord willing, I will be back December 20th, and we will continue on with the second half of our season. We go all the way to 100 episodes. But I want to thank you all for tuning in. If you are new here, you can go to my YouTube archive and click on the playlist. I've got at least 9 or 8 seasons of Daring Dialogues over there. So if you want to catch up and catch some of our previous seasons and see what books and subject matters we've been talking about, that's there. But I thank you all for tuning in and hanging in here with me. Thank you all for your time and attention. I do have a digital course that is out. And if you want to sign up for that digital course, it is god-ideas.thinkific.com. You can find that on any of my previous videos. The link is in the comment section. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be light. Take care, everyone. I wish you a wonderful next couple of weeks. Stay out of trouble. Stay out of trouble. I'm going to try to stay out of trouble. But stay out of trouble. And Lord willing, we'll be back on, I think, December 20th is the official date. I will have the official date back up on our Facebook page, on Daring Dialogues Facebook page, so you will know a specific date we'll be back. Thank you again. Have a great and wonderful evening. Good night. Aseh. Shalom.